It's possible Stephen Jones will join us, but I'm not sure. It depends where he is, which airport he's in, and which waiting lounge he's in. It's possible Stephen Jones will join us, but I'm not sure. It depends. Was that just my echo, or did it echo for everybody?
It echoed.
That should be fixed now.
That's fixed. Okay. So we can start our meeting. I'll call it to order. I want to recognize that we're conducting our meeting today on the traditional unceded territory of the Hupetchesed and the Sishat First Nations. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube in the Regional District website. Perhaps we can just quickly go around and record who's here, and so that just your name and who you're representing, and we'll start with Cindy, please.
Cindy Solda, and Regional District, City of Port Alberni.
Thank you. Michael?
Michael Hoff, member for Sprout Lake.
Thank you. Jenny?
Jenny Brown, General Manager of Community Services with the ACRD.
Pat?
Good morning. Pat Deacon, City of Port Alberni Economic Development.
And Alicia?
Alicia Fazer, Airport Project Planner with the ACRD.
Thank you. Mark?
Mark Fortune I'm the Airport Manager for the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District.
Penny?
Penny Cody, I'm the Electoral Area Director for Sprout Lake, an electoral or ACRD rep on this committee.
Thank you. And Mike?
Mike Can, Fire Chief, Sprout Lake Fire Department.
And Shelley?
Shelley Crest, Port Alberni Port Authority.
Thank you. And Dean? Nope. Names there, but not in person perhaps. And I'm Mike Rattan. I chair this committee, and I'm a member at large. Okay, we have an agenda in front of us. Not too many items on it, but very important ones. We have a motion to approve the agenda, and if there are no changes. Cindy, thank you. A seconder? And Penny, second. Anybody opposed? Then it's carried. Thank you very much. We've also had distributed the minutes from the advisory committee meeting held on June the 6th. We have a motion that the committee be received, that the minutes be received, please. Penny, is there a seconder? Shelley, thank you. Anybody opposed? Any corrections? Thank you, then it's carried. We have a request for a decision, and it's a lease application from Colson Air Crane. And it's a very interesting application, and it certainly shows that we're continuing to move along with our strategic plan. So Jenny, I'll pass this over to you at this point to review the lease application.
Thank you, Chair. Before I jump into the lease application, I just wanted to do a quick introduction of Alicia Fesser, who the ACRD has recently hired. Alicia is our new airport project planner. She will be working to support both the Long Beach Airport as well as the Alberni Valley Regional Airport in some of the projects that we'll be talking about later in the agenda. Alicia is a recent graduate of the VIU Master in Planning program and has worked at the Cowichan Valley Regional District. She definitely has a lot to learn. There's a steep learning curve as she basically gets onboarded here, but I would like to welcome the committee as she'll be doing a lot of support for the work that we proceed with. Alicia, welcome.
Welcome, Alicia. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
We have our strategic plan, which I'm sure you've had a look at, and there's lots to do.
Absolutely. Okay, and now I will go back to the report. Thank you very much. So yes, we have a preliminary lease application in front of you. We've sort of started a new process where what we're trying to do is most effectively use everyone's staff time and even applicants' time. So we've asked all applicants who are looking for new leases to fill out a very brief idea of what it is they would like for a new lease. And then we look at it in principle to see if there's any big red flags or issues. If that's good, we take it to the committee, we make sure there's support for that. Then we get them to basically flesh out the application in detail. And so this is the first stage of that. So we're asking for the committee to consider this and provide support for the preliminary application so that we can go forward, work with them to develop a formal application. Staff have reviewed this. There are some issues that are just technical in nature that we need to address. There's also concerns about building permit issues with existing lease lots. I think this is all very solvable, and staff will work with the lease applicant if the committee approves moving forward with this to work through that and then work on the formal application. As you'll see with the attachment in there, we've got the picture showing that they're really looking to sort of extend their lease area because they currently have 2 leases with us under different terms, but it's sort of irrelevant. They're all connected from a user perspective. And so we'd be looking at offering them space to do more of an apron and parking area and then another building construction. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Jenny, is it possible for you to show that on the screen?
I can do that right now.
I printed it off, but it's not in color. Oh, okay.
So the red outlined area is actually already on the existing lease area. And what we're looking at is this space right here. So the blue, which is the building, and apron and parking area. So we would be looking at extending, like their lease area actually includes this spot here and includes this area on this side of the road. And so we would be looking at basically adding in this land here to their lease.
Okay.
Can I ask why the red outline?
That's just because when they submitted this, they were talking about their the hangar that they want to build, which is on one of our existing leases. I'll do a stop share just so that the chair can see any hands that are up.
Okay, any questions? Cindy?
Just a quick question on the lease area. Is the blue building already built or is it going to be built?
Proposed.
Oh, sorry, Shelley.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. I have a few questions. One is, I guess, is this an amendment to the pre-existing lease or would this be a new lease?
So good technical question. We will probably be establishing this as a separate lease, but because it's an existing leaseholder, we will be treating it in some ways like an extension. But legally speaking, we will be setting this up as a standalone document.
Okay. And so would that new lease then run with the pre-existing length of the length of the pre-existing lease then that the tenants have?
Do you mean length of term?
Yes, sorry, length of term, yes.
We aren't at that stage yet to determine whether this is going to be a registered lease, a license of occupation. We have varying types of leases that we do. So I think that we'll have to work out the details when we get closer. There's some considerations as to why we choose each of them, and it depends if there's restrictions on the land and other issues.
Great. And my other question is has there been some analysis as to how this expansion fits with the criteria for the airport expansion? For example, I understand it's manufacturing and engine repair. How does that fit with the legislative requirements? And also, the vision for the airport? I guess I would like to see some analysis around that.
Well, I can say in short, and Mark can jump in if he wants to, but the engine repair is airplane engine repair is my understanding. So that aligns with both the strategic vision, which is that this is an industrial airport. We want to focus on this kind of aviation. Colson's is exactly aligned. Their business, we are a business focused airport. So that works with our strategic plan. And then also with the provincial restrictions on what can happen, or yes, provincial restrictions on air use. This is absolutely air related activity. So it falls, this is really in line with that. So we support that strongly.
Good to know. And I guess my last question is, have other tenants been consulted? And if so, what has their response been?
We have not consulted other tenants at this point. We are really just in the preliminary stages of looking at this.
And is there a requirement to consult other tenants as it goes forward, Jenny?
We don't have that as part of our process as a requirement.
Okay.
Okay. Mark, you had a question or something you wanted to say?
No, that's, I was just, I was giving a thumbs up. Jenny nailed it on the application there, that it's the use, the proposed use fits both criteria, both provincially and within our own mandate.
Okay, just one quick question, Jenny. I mean, it's great that they want to expand, and I know that they continue to meet, try to meet demands internationally and what have you. Where this building is, would they ever need direct access to the runway from that building, or is it because it's manufacturing that wouldn't be an issue?
Mark, I'll let you speak to that.
My understanding is they will not need direct access for that proposed structure. Once again, it's engine manufacturing, so it'd be both basically smaller components. If you can go back to your package, they would have basically access through a current driveway network, so they could access either the future hangar lot or also the current hangar area. So they have access in that proposed location. They've also proposed an apron, so basically a large, most likely either asphalt or concrete area in front of the structure, where they could actually bring an aircraft right into the front of that new proposed building. So they could, in theory, bring a 737 right in and probably do a quick engine change near that apron. So I think they've thought that out as part of their application, and it makes sense.
Okay. Thank you. Cindy?
Just a quick question on lease rates. Like, I know there's a proposal, or did I read that right, about lease rates looking at them? And also, is there an ETA on the red building? I'm going red building, the 300 square foot building.
I'll speak to the lease rates. So we recently did a market rate assessment in December. The lease rates for the market right now are 30 cents per square foot for large areas. That would be this piece. That is the lease rate that we have for Colson's, because they have quite a large leased area. And then for the smaller lease lots, it's 35 cents per square foot. So that is the rate that would be sought for this lease. And Mark, did you want to speak to the red building area?
Sure, I can speak to the red building. So the Colson Group has had various reiterations of what their main hangar is going to look like. We've gone through about 3 or 4 actual plans. They've gone through a soft shell structure. They've looked at hard shell structure. They've looked like an open face structure. And that proposed area at the moment is still proposed because they're still trying to figure out exactly what will meet their needs best. So even though it's red, it's marked in there, we still don't have a firm idea of where they want to go with the actual composition of the structure.
Okay, thank you. They've been talking about this for a long time.
Yes, they have.
Okay, I don't see any more comments or questions. Oh, Penny. Yeah.
Thanks. So beyond the red square, is there land available? Could we develop farther along another expansion?
Mark?
I'll answer that one if that's okay. So where the Colsons are, they are basically at the end of taxiway Bravo, and they've built up to basically the edge of a large hill. So expansion to the west is going to be very expensive. It could be done, but it would be very expensive. We do have an option on the south side of Airport Road, basically opposite the Thunderbird facility. There is land available there, so we could also expand, or their operation could expand to the east if they so had the inclination. We've also got plans for future build out in that area for a taxiway network to actually cross Airport Road and service lots on the east, or sorry, the south side of Airport Road. So we do have that plan in place, and we have some land sort of being held in reserve for access routes to that location.
Okay. Thank you. I'm not seeing any more hands raised or questions. We have a recommendation there. And it says that the Alberni Valley Regional Airport Committee supports the preliminary lease application from Colson Air Crane Limited and recommend that the ACRD Board of Directors consider approval of the final application. Is there someone that wishes to make that motion? Cindy, is there a seconder? And Penny, any opposition? All in favor? Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Everybody? We have reports, and Jenny, is this coming from you as well?
Yeah, I can get started on this. Thank you, Chair. I believe Mark will be jumping in to provide more updates, so that'll be good. We wanted to put together just an update of the current action work plan list for the committee to receive input on our current work plan, and also to help us prioritize. Budget season will be upon us. We want to make sure that we're aligned with what we want. Some of these items were a result of our strategic plan, and we've been working towards them. I did keep a couple items on there of items that were achieved. We've also had items that have just come up as a priority as we've been moving along. And I think I can probably just start going through the list. And Mark, I'll let you jump in, or I might even ask you to elaborate on a few of these, and then maybe we'll leave it open for questions. So the first one is the grass landing strip, which was completed in 2021. The opening celebration that was spearheaded by the committee, and that has been completed in last summer. The lease rates review we've talked about briefly, and the implementation is almost completely done in that regard. So just getting all of the lease rates up to market rate. Lease lot expansion. So Mark talked a bit about that. We do have a conceptual design completed. So when and if we have interest for expansion, we have an idea of where we're going to be going with that. And I think the next steps in that really are going to be contingent on interest. And we get some interest, we're hearing some interest, but we don't have the preliminary applications coming in yet. But that's not to say that we won't have them coming in soon. The internet is another one, and we actually put a report, a more detailed report attached to this because we asked our IT team to come up with a bit of an options on this one. And essentially, we've been looking at different options for TELUS. Originally, there was a private contractor who had, I think, quoted $60,000 to install dedicated fiber for all of the existing leaseholders. That option is no longer available. And now there is two options really for us. One is TELUS can provide us with a dedicated managed fiber service to the airport terminal. And our IT team has said that they can actually then sublet that out because it's quite a bit of capacity, like gigabytes that can be subdivided, but there would be costs for each of the tenants if they were interested in sharing that. The ongoing cost for the ACRD, so we would be spending about $18,000 to get that managed fiber installed, and then the fee is $900 a month If that was shared among multiple tenants, each tenant would have to pay at least $1,500 for their own hardware to then receive some of that managed service and a portion of the internet service. That would be a way that we can bring internet into the terminal building and then provide to other leaseholders if there was an interest. That still is a little bit high for them. The alternative is Starlink. And if we went with Starlink, then it is an upfront cost of just over $3,000 and the monthly fees are $320. That really only provides the internet to the terminal building, which allows us to have communication for our fuel upgrades. And we could put in a public Wi-Fi system for that. If anyone else was interested in doing Starlink, they would manage their own. There's a lot of benefits to having the individual leaseholders each have their own internet connection with either TELUS or Starlink, because managing a tiny internet service out at the airport is rife with challenges and time that would be allowed for that. So we will ask the tenants if there's interest, but in order to make the TELUS option competitive with the Starlink option for, say, the terminal building, I think we would have to have all of the tenants interested in getting that service, which I don't know if that's going to be the case. That is that. Cindy, I guess the question is, should we stop at that one now and then we can continue to go down the list, just because that is a little bit of a big one and I did see Cindy's hand go up.
Let's just stop there in case there are questions about this, and I see Cindy's got a question.
So my question is, how does Coulson use internet and tenants? How many do we have? And I'm just looking at cost and stuff like that. So would they be interested? How are they on the internet now? Are they using their phones? What are they doing? And do you need to have, do these tenants really need internet out there?
I can ask Mark to talk about the number, but I know that Coulson's does have a dedicated, they already have their own dedicated service that they've set up for themselves. And Mark, if you want to elaborate.
Yep. So TELUS supplies managed copper service onto the airport lands, and the current Coulson is using that. They're a primary user, and also the Thunderbird crew are utilizing that service. And the $18,000 that Jenny had spoken about, that would be connecting us onto that existing service. So running a line back down to the terminal building and hooking us into that managed service. It's very, but the install is cheap, but the annual monthly fee is very expensive. We can do it in more economic ways. And going forward, right now, we've had requests for basically internet service in the terminal for flight planning purposes. We had numerous requests when the road closures were in place for internet access at the terminal. We just don't have the bandwidth currently at that location. And as businesses start to develop on the field, depending on what they're doing, internet would probably be a very useful asset to have, if they supply it through Starlink or if we supply it through a managed service.
Could I just carry on with the question?
Go ahead, Cindy.
So what would be better in the long run if the tenants are interested to go with the 18,000, which is 900 a month, and you divide that amount of 900 a month amongst the tenants, and how many tenants would be interested? I mean, if there's only two, it's not going to work, but at 300 a month, and I'm also looking, what is the better internet, the 18,000 or is it the 3,000? So I'm just looking at how many tenants would come aboard.
We're recommending our next steps to basically inquire with the tenants to see what the interest level is. And then depending on that, we'll have to take a next step based on that. We really don't know at this point.
I would be really interested in to know all that before decisions are being made.
Yeah. Penny, you had a question?
I do, thanks. So I'm interested in knowing why they why they're doing copper. The copper is not being supported anymore. So I've I live at Sprout Lake, and it's all switching over to fiber. So my telephone line is fiber,
Mhm.
So
voice over fiber. So it doesn't make any sense to be doing copper.
Thank you.
I think for clarity, Mark, it was that the existing line that Colson's has is copper, but the quote that we have is for fiber. Am I right?
I believe it would also be copper. I'm not, I'd have to review the quote, but the only thing we have in a managed internet service is the service that's going to Thunderbirds and the Colsons. There's a, in the back of the Flying Club hangar, there is basically it's a router point for TELUS. So they've got a bank of available slots that we could pull that same service. It is a primitive service compared to the fiber. And Penny, I agree with you 100%. On the West Coast, we've all gone from copper over to fiber, and the offer that TELUS has put out is expensive, and I think it's also dated.
Oh, Shelley.
Yes, I was wondering, I guess, about Rogers. You know, I'm hearing TELUS, and I'm also understanding that TELUS is having tremendous problems here on the island. I've actually experienced it myself, gone to them, and they've basically said, go to the other service provider, which is becoming larger and larger, as we know, with the merger. So I just wonder about Rogers. I understand it works fairly well on the West Coast. Second question is around what Tofino Long Beach Airport does, whether we've canvassed what other small airports do in terms of internet process.
Mark.
So we were lucky. Basically, the whole West Coast was supplied with fiber 4 or 5 years ago. The airport terminal at Tofino is fiber, and we've got a couple runs that run into this facility that support our basically terminal building, waiting area, and also secured lines for our air transportation folk, Pacific Coastal, Tofino Airlines, and budget, and then ACRD office operations as well.
So I, for one, would be really interested in having our staff do the research and come back to us with a recommendation, because I mean, you're really good at that, and you already have all the connections, you know what you're doing. And rather than chew up a lot of time right now, do your work and come back to us. Okay. Penny?
Thanks. So I have a connection with Rogers, and UBCM is just around the corner. So I think that this is a really good opportunity to start lobbying, connecting with Rogers and TELUS, and saying that we want fiber provided to the airport area. That it's being expanded everywhere else. The federal government is giving grants out to companies all the time for expanding for internet. So I think that we are a prime area to be provided with this service. So I think that I'll put that on my list for UBCM to try and make that connection. I think that my one fellow, Samuel, is no longer with Rogers. I'm not sure. He wasn't sure how he would come out through the merger. So, but I'll connect with him for sure and see what we can do. I know that Rogers has provided Sprout Lake with the cell tower that still doesn't work for me, but still living in the black hole. Anyways,
Well, certainly
that's something we can work on.
this summer, because of the Cameron Bluffs fire, it's really underscored for everyone exactly how important our airport is. And we need to make sure that we're as connected to there as we are, as we need to be. So Penny, if you can shake the trees a little bit on that one, that would be fantastic. And I know you'll keep in contact with Jenny and Mark on whatever you find anyway. Okay, Jenny, shall we move on?
I think Pat has his hand up.
Oh, Pat, sorry. Yes, you do.
Thank you. And following on your comments there, I know the EOC will be doing an after action debrief with the province because of the road closure and the wildfire. And I think it would be a good opportunity to bring up the need for a connection to the terminal and operations center there at that time, among the other things. And maybe that's already on your list, Jenny or Heather.
Okay, thank you. Turning back to you, Jenny.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Okay, so going down the list, the other one is the airport user fees establishment. So we have a bylaw created and we just need to set up a system for collecting fees. That's for landing fees and other items. Road entry signage. This is one that was identified in the strategic plan. And through the meetings, I believe the committee was looking to take this on as to champion this. And we haven't had much movement on this. So this is one of the items that I am looking for feedback on from the committee, whether there is interest for the committee to take this on, or if you want to delegate this to staff to make this a priority to get a road sign put up, and what level of priority you would like to see that at. I'll just continue on. The AWAS, maybe I'll stop.
I do have a question about the sign.
Okay, go ahead.
Is that something that we could apply to ICE-T for? Just wondering if that would be an opportunity, or I'm pretty sure we could use the Canadian gas tax, the works funds for that.
Excellent point. I don't know if the funding is necessarily the holdup for this. I think it's more about what does this more about getting the collective input to have an idea of what a new sign would look like. I actually think it is the creative part of this that is the first step that has to happen, and basically getting a committee together to decide what sign you want. I know we can find money to fund the sign, in whether it's a grant or not.
We had talked with Brandy Lauder about having some Indigenous input. So I gather we haven't heard back.
We haven't heard back, no.
Again, I think that in order to move this project forward, we would need to set a champion, right? So a person who is going to make this happen and move this forward. And I believe that's why we haven't seen movement on this. And originally it was not assigned to staff. My understanding, I think, was just, especially at the outcome of that strategic plan, is that there's things that the committee can do, and you guys wanted to be a working committee.
Yeah.
But if that, again, depending on the level of priority and how much staff time you would like to allocate to this, we can reassess.
We didn't have an Alicia in those days either, so now we do. Cindy, did you have a question?
Just a quick one, thank you. The sign, can you tell me what kind of budget was allocated for it, and how bigger is? We have no idea what anything.
Again, I think that we need to, the idea was that a better sign would be better for the airport. And I think that the idea is that a champion puts together a group of people that comes up with an idea of what is a sign that is wanted to be. We can put that into our capital budget for AVRA, right? So if we look at what it's going to look like, we'll get a cost estimate, and then we can put that back to the committee for review, and then we can amend the budget for the following year to make that update, apply for grant funding. I think there's all that can happen.
Oh my God, that sounds like the city of Port Alberni doing the welcome sign for Port Alberni, and it's taken how long? And I mean, it's a sign, guys, and I just have a problem with the time frame I can see happening here.
Yeah.
Yeah, signs are a funny thing. They everywhere I work on signs, especially, there is an existing sign there. And so, but I think the feedback was that there is opportunity for a better sign. And if maybe there is, but maybe this isn't a high priority for the group to be addressing at this time.
Yeah.
if I could jump in,
Go
Mr.
ahead,
Chair,
Shelley.
I guess for me, it doesn't seem like the highest of priorities at this point, and I think you've nailed it, Jenny, in my view. Otherwise, I think it would have moved a lot faster already. So I think we've got some other more pressing issues that go towards the bigger vision here. It's just my view.
Yeah, okay, maybe some lighting. Okay, Jenny, moving on.
AWAS certification, I will absolutely hand that over to Mark.
Yep, I'll take over that one. So we've submitted an application for certification for Canada, but basically that was mid-COVID, and during that time they had changed their requirements, so we have to resubmit a much more detailed application for them, and if we're lucky, we'll try and get it done this fall for hopefully certification early in the spring. And what that'll do, that'll also assist with our approach review, which has started. So hopefully with all the new pieces in place, we can get lower approaches into the AV site in 2024, 2025. Back to you, Jenny.
Thank you, Mark. The next one on the list we have is just the long-term lease application process. For the most part, I think that there's very little effort to finalize this. So we will plan to put that on our next year's work plan, or this 12-month period work plan, to put that in place. It will have associated fees in order to recover the staff time associated with that, is the intent. So we would then bring back a report to this committee for review of what those fees would look like, what the process would look like, and you can review and approve that new process before we implement it.
Okay, thank you.
Similar to the road signage, we also had terminal signage and information as an item that came out of the strategic plan. And I would say that this is very much along the same line. So this is will be a very time-consuming project. We haven't seen a champion or subcommittee out of the group come up. And so we are looking to hear what the direction and priority level on this is from the committee.
Any comment, committee? Cindy?
So I would agree with Shelley regarding priority. Where's the priority? What do we really need in there? If it's lights, I would like to move forward on things like that will actually bring planes in. And like, I'm not an expert at that by all means, but I would rather utilize our airport a little more before we look at the signs. Everybody in Port Alberni knows where the airport is. So, you know, let's utilize the money somewhere else at the moment.
And I believe the nuance with the terminal information was that it would be like just information on the wall. So it could be, you know, historical information about the airport and the land, and just for people coming in, it would be a informational signage when they land. So, but again, I'm hearing that we're not going to be putting this at the top of our work plan, and maybe not even on this next 12-month work plan.
Right.
Which is great. All right. Annual airport day. We had that excellent event last summer, and it was an idea that we would follow up with an annual airport day. The original event was really spearheaded by the tenants out at the airport and the committee. And so I, again, wanted to ask the committee on their level of priority for something like this, if we want to invest staff time in this or let it happen organically, asking for direction.
And certainly I was the one that represented this committee on that very heavily. And it was a little bit like pushing the proverbial boulder uphill. The volunteers at the airport were the ones who did really all the work. They were amazing, and I look to them for the leadership on that. And I can see that we can support it, but I look to that existing society to trigger it. And if they want to see it happen, great. But I don't necessarily see it as an annual event for the sake of making it an annual event. Mark.
Just to follow up, Chair. The Flying Club was the primary organizer for that last event. We asked them for direction basically this year if they were planning another event, and they said no. They had burnt some people out on the previous event, and they're just holding a small event for 2023. But they may be looking at doing something in the coming years.
Yeah. Penny?
So how old is the airport? I'm just wondering if we need to have like a 20th anniversary or something like that coming up, if we had a date in mind in the near future that we could support for an annual airport day.
I'm sure we can come up with one for you. Actual inception of the airport, we're probably, it's 1991 or 92. I'd have to find out the actual completion for the very first part of the gravel runway at this new location. I know the Flying Club has actually been around since, I think it's the mid 40s. So they were looking at celebrating, I think, 80 years in 2023, that they were just doing a smaller event.
Okay. Darren Hansen hasn't been in touch with me on this particular issue, so I would think if the Flying Club wanted to do something, they would have involved us.
Yep, and I have been in touch with Darren back in the spring, and that's the direction I received at that time.
Okay.
Which I honestly I was quite pleased with, because I had a lot on my plate.
As do we all. Penny.
So I've also been in touch with Darren. He's a friend of mine, and yeah, he said there was something small happening, but they were exhausted from last event. So yeah, I'm happy for them.
Great.
So
Thank
we'll support it, but not going to lead it.
Thank you for that feedback. That's very helpful. CanPass reapplication. Mark can speak more to this, but staff are working with Colson's on a reapplication for that project, and that will be staff resources dedicated in that. We've also reached out to Pat Deacon and his role as for the economic development component, and we're hoping to put an application in probably within the next, I would say, 4 months would be a reasonable timeline. Mark, feel free to add anything to that.
Yeah, not the regarding CanPass application, the situation that's happened over the last, honestly, really the last 2 months with forest fire activity in the province and even worldwide has really highlighted the need for the Colsons to have that immediate access for AOG, aircraft on ground part support, where they would definitely benefit from being able to fly directly to their home base at the Alberni Valley and out to international destinations. We have made an application back in, I think it was 2015 for CanPass. We were denied in 2017, and nothing much has changed in our application. We met basically all the criteria in the initial application, but we were denied. But I think the Colsons have brought on some expertise to lobby on the federal side. And with conditions the way they are right now, I think it's a prime time to make another application and try and push that CanPass through for the airport. I believe they still, CBSA still supports basically marine operations out of the harbor. And somebody could correct me on that. I appreciate it, but I believe they support a service into the valley already. So the airport's not that much of a stretch.
Okay. Go ahead, Jenny.
Thanks, Mark. And I'll actually, Mark, if you don't mind doing a fuel card lock upgrade update.
Yep, I can do that as well. So our current fuel concession site, so the actual part that takes your credit card and you pay for your purchase, has reached its end of life. We currently operate a QT Pod 3000. It's basically almost 70s technology. We have bought a new QT Pod 4000 unit. We'll be installing that in the fall when there's less visitation to the site, because there will probably be installation delay of maybe up to a week as we convert the system over. So we have the component. It's already on site at the airport. We're just waiting for things to slow down from a business standpoint so we can actually take that fuel system offline. That would affect both avgas and jet fuel. And I don't see doing it until we have some wetter weather and the fire risk goes down, because the AVRA site does get utilized for fire service activities. Most recently, the fire that we had above Coombs Country Candy in the valley, that was action through helicopter ops, and they were using our fuel system for that. That's the most recent application. So that is on the way, not until the fall.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Go ahead, Jenny, back to you.
And the next one I can provide a quick update on. Michael and I have touched base on this. Again, we capitalized on the Cameron Lake fire situation and talked to Flynn Rowe and explained the absolute urgency to get this OLS cut permits, license to cut, and our tenure for this work for the long term expedited. There was original concerns with First Nations approval, and I think we've come to a place where we've sorted that out and we're moving it forward. So we do expect with that, they've said that this is one of their highest priorities. This is our highest priority. So we expect to have that approval in place by September, October. And then as soon as there isn't a fire hazard, we will be able to be removing the trees, which will allow for lots of improvements to happen. So that's good. The equipment shelter, which we are planning to reissue the tender in 2024. So we will be putting that in our budget and reissuing documentation. You will be seeing that probably mid-February when we receive quotes for that again. And that'll be the next stage for that project.
Sorry, Jenny, just remind us where that's going to be located, please.
That'll be Mark. Location?
Mark.
Location for that structure is basically along along Airport Road, in behind the fuel depot. So all the ACRD sort of assets, resources will be basically all nestled together in that one area.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. And the last one I will also let Mark talk to, which is the regulatory review of the IAP.
Yep. So our instrument approach procedure for the airport is actually 4 years old. Imagine that. Time flies when you're having fun and COVID. So we have a regulatory review that's being conducted. It has started. This is a requirement of Transport Canada, where the approaches have to be reviewed on a 5-year cyclical period. So we basically start on the 4th, and that is in process. We'll probably see something maybe by the end of this year, but for sure 2024. And that's we're also working with that AWAS reapplication, because we have the AWAS certified. We will be able to lower our approach minimum at that time as well. Back to Jenny.
Thank you, Mark. And thank you, everybody. Stephen Jones, your question. Welcome.
Hey, how are you?
Stephen? I'm doing great.
Thanks. Mark, I was just curious. I think I kind of asked it before, but with getting those trees cut down, have you guys been talking to like approach providers or anyone to know exactly, like, is there a plan in place as soon as they're cut down to get that in the works, or is that still going to be another thing that'll be a while after the trees are all taken care of? And if you've been talking to them, do they have any kind of indication of the limits that they'll have in place there?
So a couple things we have to cut down. We have an approved, or not an approved, but a recognized approach into the airport. So it's an obstacle limitation surface plane that we're using to basically move the cutting program forward. Once we remove all the obstacles within that, we'll have to have it surveyed again. But once we have a recognized procedural approach with our obstacle limitation surface, that will also allow us to lower our approach limits. So with the trees gone and the AWAS functioning, we may be able to get down to around 800 feet at that site. So that it's actually, it'll be a big bonus. So hopefully 2024 will be fantastic. Once we actually have those trees taken out, we do have an asset already on the field, which are PAPIs. So we have PAPIs at both ends of the runways. Those are turned off at the moment because we don't want to be directing people into trees. But that vertical guidance device, once the approaches are clear, will be activated, and that'll be another way of supporting approaches into the airfield.
Okay, so yeah, that sounds good. So you have been talking to a provider to essentially have something go into the cap as soon as the trees are down, or the process has started at least anyways.
That's correct. We have a restricted approaches right now, which the Coulsons can utilize. And once we have something that we can pull out of the restricted category, then it'll be open to everybody.
Perfect. Hopefully that'll go smoothly with the trees.
Okay, and Michael?
Yeah, just a quick question for you. It kind of ties in with a few of the things you've been talking about, CAN pass and you know, the OLS and providers and trying to get lower limits. I'm just curious who you're trying to get in to this airport with these lower limits. You know, I was kind of wondering, it was great that Helijet came in here, but they must have had to do a risk assessment on the fact that we don't have crash fire rescue. So as a 705 operator, even though you could get a narrow body Airbus in there, I couldn't even file it as an alternate because of the level of service. So are you just trying to get single engine air taxi operators in there, or who's the end user of this lower limits?
The end user of the lower limits will be anybody that wants to access that site. So it could be the Coulsons, could be GA aircraft. It will be air ambulance. They've used that site extensively recently. And air ambulance also uses the Tofino site, more for fixed wing, not rotary. But when you're moving MCI, mass casualty incident scenarios, we've done that in the Valley. We've also done it out here on the West Coast. They usually bring in fixed wing operations. Once again, the military can still even pull on that as well. So once those are a published procedure, it's basically open to anybody to utilize it. We're not targeting one particular sector.
Right. And just a follow-up question. So Long Beach, do they have crash fire? Like what's their level of service?
No, we don't have crash fire at we have an AMA, an automatic mutual aid agreement between Tofino and Ucluelet, the two jurisdictions that are supporting airport operations. So we're using structural firefighters and apparatus for the fire suppression at the site.
And that's strictly for Long Beach, not for the Alberni Valley.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so if somebody like Pasco wanted to come in, they'd have to have that level of service at Alberni as well, right?
That is correct.
Okay, thanks.
Once again, the risk assessment, as you mentioned, that's a risk assessment internally to whatever company you're operating. We have the same thing with jets, larger scale business jets, like CL600s and things like that. They'll do a risk assessment on our site on the West Coast. And we've also had a fairly large increase in like larger turbojet traffic into the Port Alberni Airport as well. Just
Right.
because it's width and length consideration.
Has there been any sort of a study where, you know, somebody coming in at a 604 or some sort of private corporate jet, you know, is taking the limits down 200 feet gonna mean that they come in, or are they strictly going to be a VFR operation based on their risk assessment?
Probably, honestly, their risk assessment, it would be a VFR operation or you know, a clear night operation. Just because of if they're not familiar with the airfield, it is surrounded by a valley. So you know,
It's sort of what I'm figuring. So there seems to be a lot of effort put into lowering the limits, but it's a cost versus benefit thing. Like I don't see the big increase in traffic where somebody's like, woohoo, I can get 200 feet lower. So now I'm going to shoot a GNSS approach into a granite valley in an airport. I don't know. I mean, it wouldn't pass any risk assessment I've ever seen.
No, and that's a point to take. There is no real cost to trying to go for a lower limit, in the fact that we've had to actually buy the approach ourselves because we don't have enough traffic for Nav Canada to support the actual approach. At the Tofino site, we have enough traffic in and out of the site that the actual approaches are maintained by Nav Canada. In the Alberni Valley, for us to have an approach, we have to fund it ourselves. This review that we're currently undergoing would happen anyway. We'd have to pay for it. If we were able to access lower approaches, that's just a bonus for utilization. There's no added cost to doing it. It's just the cost of doing business, period.
And the clearing of the trees is not a significant cost either.
Well, the clearing of the trees is a safety issue. The clearing of the trees was supposed to be given to Flinro for them to manage on our behalf, and there's been some hiccups on that. That's a long story. I don't have time for that right now, but if we want to get a coffee sometime, I could fill you on that one. That is
but on a PANOPS type assessment, you know, for your balanced field out of there, has somebody done those accelerate, stop, accelerate, go, screen height decisions, and are the trees being lowered going to make a big difference to who comes in here and who doesn't?
The trees being lowered will allow us to meet a recognized standard. So right now we meet no standard. So once we have a recognized standard and we can maintain a recognized standard, then that just makes our OLS easy to maintain. And moving forward, we won't allow structures or height impediments to be put in that location. And Christmas tree farms, you think, would be a good thing to put on an approach surface or under an approach surface. But if Christmas tree farm is not maintained, they will start to impede in that or penetrate into that surface. So it's just
understood. Got it. And through the chair, if I might, I had one more question, if we have time for that.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure who brought it up, but before we got into the whole signage thing, there was a first bullet point that said collecting landing fees. I just wanted to do a little bit of a drill down on that. Is there some sort of conversation on administering landing fees, and to whom?
I'll start off with that one. We don't have a bullet point for collecting landing fees right now. We're in the process with our bylaw that we've set up with the airfield at collecting parking fees. It would be very expensive and probably not cost positive to collect landing fees at the site at the moment. For example, at the Tofino site, we have basically leaseholders that operate off the field. They're charged, you know, a lease fee and an AMC charge, and they're given unlimited flights from that location. And then we have Nav Canada oversight on our location, so we receive NCAMS data, so arrivals, departures, times, aircraft, all that kind of stuff through Nav Canada. And then we put that through a billing system and we bill out. And it's not that lucrative, I'll tell you that. It's above break even, but we're a slightly busier airport. in AVRA's situation, a lot of the users are tenants. So we wouldn't be charging them. We do get a fair number of traffic in the summer, especially, but probably not enough to make it a break even for landing fees. The cost to set up a form of collection service to monitor that would be rather expensive and time consuming.
Yeah, and it just sort of caught my attention because I've seen other airports that have done stuff that dropped off movements, and I'm not sure what your revenue stream is for movements, but they seem to be a big indicator. You look at moves like an airport like Castlegar made, where they lost a large amount of their movements due to the termination of the college program, and now everything is shifting to trail, and that airport is dying. And in GA, when you do something as simple as shut down the pie shop in Chilliwack, people stop flying in for a piece of pie, and all of a sudden your airport drops off the map.
So in our situation, we are basically on one of the triangles of a round robin route from Victoria, even Vancouver. We get a lot of flight traffic, training traffic out at the West Coast as well. But where we don't catch people on landing fees, we can also catch them on fuel as well. So yeah, fuel is a very popular spot, or our location is very popular for fueling, and prices go up and down, but that's one way of getting that revenue back from basically users that aren't based at your airfield.
Yeah, I was just throwing it out there as a caution, because I've seen a lot of incentives to get people to buy fuel, including a car that you can sign out when you fuel up, and everybody needs fuel. But as soon as you start a landing fee system, the GA people are gone.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And Pat, I think last one to you on this. You had your hand up.
Myself?
No, Pat Deacon.
No, I did not,
Oh.
Mike.
Okay, sorry. Penny, you had a question?
I did, just looking at the equipment shelter. It's a reissue of tender, and I can't remember if no one bid or if it was too high.
I'll answer that one. We had, in a attempt to get better funding, we had combined a work shelter at the Tofino Airport and also at the Port Alberni Airport as part of a tender application or request. And that's right when everything was just spiking for construction costs. Our estimate was almost double at the AVRA site, and it was over double at the Tofino site. So we had to cancel both those requests. It's a very modest building. I think at that time, a price for a piece of half-inch plywood was over $60. It's back down to around 25 now. So I think when we re-tender this project in hopefully 2024, we'll have more reasonable costing.
Okay, thank you, Mark, and thank you, staff, for that update, that report. It's always good for us to know what's going on and where we're at in terms of our strategic plan. Could we have a motion, please, to receive that report from the staff? Shelley, thank you. Is there a seconder? Cindy, thank you. Anybody opposed? And carried. Is there any late business from the committee? Penny?
Thank you. I'm sorry, I should have added this at the beginning of the meeting to add to the agenda, but I've had a meeting with Colson, and they're interested in putting some housing out near the airport for their staffing. So I know that.
Sorry, Penny, but we're going to have a 2/3 vote to add the late.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So those in favor of adding this late business, we require 2/3. Cindy, Michael, Dan, okay. We're carried. Go ahead, Penny.
Okay, sorry, just short. I know that there's no action we could take at all, but just wanted to let the committee know that Colson are looking at being able to provide housing. They could bring in another 50 people or more, good paying jobs to their site if they could actually find housing for them. So it would be to our advantage to try to help them out, looking at some options. I know I've talked to staff as well, and yeah. Anyways, just wanted to pass that along. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, there may be members of the public who are part of this. I don't know. If so, this would be an opportunity for the public out there for questions. And Jenny?
Yeah, through the chair. There are no public inquiries. I've asked and we've received no questions.
Okay, thank you. Then that brings us to the conclusion of our meeting. We need a motion to adjourn, please. Cindy, a seconder. And Shelley, thank you. Then everybody, thank you so much for participating in this meeting. Staff, thank you so much for setting up the meeting for us. Our next scheduled meeting is November 16th at 10 a.m. That's the third Thursday of 3 months from now. And then there is a request, Jenny, if we could please put out a list to the committee of the meeting dates and times. And just get that around, and then everybody can put it in their calendar quite nicely. And I really want to thank committee members for participating from wherever you are. And Stephen Jones, thank you for joining us. This is great. So it shows a commitment and an interest in our airport. I mean, that's why we do it, because it's important. So thank you, everybody. And we'll see everybody on November 16th. Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.